In the last 7 years, I spent an absurd amount of time growing social media accounts for businesses, and in those 7 years, 90% of that time was spent on LinkedIn. I've ran the social media marketing for over 30 different companies and counting, and scaled the presence of some SaaS giants you might have heard of, like Triple Whale, who I helped go from zero to pretty much everywhere on LinkedIn in the Shopify ecosystem, and Adam Robinson, who I helped launch his LinkedIn presence from 0 to 25K, and he's pretty much the poster child for founder-led content at this point. And back in May of 2022, I started this newsletter where I share everything I know about LinkedIn strategy, SaaS marketing. So as you can imagine, I have some pretty decent advice to give. So instead of sending it in my newsletter and having you sift through everything yourself, I've condensed all my best information down into this single video for you so you can just mentally download it all as quickly as possible. And by the time this video ends, every question you can think of about how to grow on LinkedIn will be answered for you. And you can just take all this information and use it to go grow on your own. The first piece of advice I've got for you today is to grow a strong, congruent content ecosystem. And this is where I see a lot of companies go wrong. A lot of startups and founders will have this really scattered approach to their content marketing. There's no cohesive strategy. They have a company account posting a bunch of white papers and stuff that their audience doesn't really care about. They might post the occasional piece of founder-led content, but it's not really that good. And they do this for months and wonder why LinkedIn doesn't work for them. It's like they're an octopus trying to juggle everything, but dropping every ball. No clear strategy, no alignment with business goals, not understanding your audience's needs at all, posting sporadically or not at all, using irrelevant, unfocused, or just generic messaging which doesn't really hit with your ICP. Instead, you need to make sure all the pieces work together, and there are a few components to this I want to walk you through. One is that you have to have very clear positioning for your LinkedIn content. I'll get into this in a second in this video, but at a high level, you want to become the go-to resource for your target customer in a very specific niche. And all of your content, whether it be from your founder, anyone on your team, your company page, should all revolve around that positioning. And when you're posting this content, you should have a very methodical approach to testing different formats like images, video, text only, graphics, and seeing what works best for your startup. Now, the biggest thing when it comes to building a content ecosystem is having the right types of accounts posting. It all starts with founder-led content, especially in 2024 or in 2025 or 26 when you're watching this video. Founder-led content is the way to go and where I'd recommend 99% of companies start. People want to follow people, and your founder is the best person, or if you are the founder watching this, you are the best person to be the face of your brand on LinkedIn. Now, once you have your founder posting very consistently, you want to layer in other people on your team. So other C-suites like your CMO or your CFO or other people that have something to share that your target audience might find helpful. This could even be more junior employees like your social media manager or your marketing coordinator. It doesn't have to be reserved for C-suites or high-level employees. The point is to get other folks aside from your founder or founders posting on LinkedIn. This helps contribute to the feeling of being everywhere. The last piece to this is the company account, which yes, you do want to be posting from your company account. I'll get into this actually in the next point, in that I wouldn't start with the company account, and that's probably the last thing I would focus on if you're building on LinkedIn from scratch. But once you have your founder dialed in, your team's posting, having an active company account where you share case studies and really kind of treat it as a landing page is an effective strategy. A startup that does this so well is Beehive. So their founder and CEO, Tyler, posts consistently both on LinkedIn and on X, but for the sake of this video, I'll focus on LinkedIn. He posts consistently on LinkedIn, as you can see, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, 5 days ago, very consistent, almost daily cadence. And as we can see, scrolling through his account, it gets really good engagement. So over 300 likes, 33 comments, 11 reposts. This one has over 200 likes, 26 comments, 6 reposts. This is a direct link, so it's a little bit lower, but almost 100 likes, 9 comments. For a link, not terrible. A feature launch, almost 250 likes, 78 comments, 35 reposts. A lot of those are probably team members, which kind of gets into my next point, which is you want to have your team active on social, and Beehive does this amazing. I promise if you make a post on LinkedIn asking, hey, should I use Beehive or ConvertKit? Just wait like 30 seconds and you're going to start to see either Tyler himself or other folks on the Beehive team jumping in the comments and kind of pointing you in the direction of Beehive. And in addition to the founder and their team being active on LinkedIn, they also have a pretty dialed in company page, which is not that common with a lot of startups these days. If you scroll through, they've got this kind of timely campaign, kind of scrolling through the brand account. You've got a feature roundup. You've got sort of a funny one-liner. You've got a repost from a team remember, again, going back to having your team being active on LinkedIn, you have an announcement of a new creator using Beehive, which again helps to build social proof. So as you can see, you can kind of use your founder's account to get a lot of visibility and engagement. And you drive that traffic to your company page where you share features, case studies, all this stuff that's a bit more bottom of funnel, in addition to some humor and top of funnel stuff. But having that content ecosystem really makes it feel like you're everywhere. And again, using Beehive as an example, I can't open LinkedIn and scroll more than a few times without seeing something from someone on the Beehive team, whether it's Tyler himself, whether it's a team member, or the brand account. You want your target audience to be able to consume your content in as many formats as possible from as many people on your team as possible. And again, it creates this sort of echo chamber. So because I want to load this video with value, here's one of the most important things to remember when you're just starting on LinkedIn. And that's the idea that people buy from people, not from companies or corporations. And if we look at a few examples of how this plays out in reality, Airbnb releases all their new features in their winter and spring releases through Brian Chesky's account, not from the brand account, or they'll post it on the brand account, but it gets like 1% of the engagement. Another example we can see here is Henry Schuck, the CEO and founder at ZoomInfo, posted this product marketing video, which got over 1,000 engagements. Really good video, by the way, but tons of engagement, and people in the comments absolutely loved it. And they posted the same exact video on the brand account. If we compare the engagement between the two, Henry's got over 1,000 engagements, and the brand account post got about 150, 160 engagements. And if we look at the comments, going back to Henry's, 124 comments on his personal brand and 10 comments on the company account. So that's over 12 times the number of comments on Henry's account versus the company page, and almost 10 times the amount of engagement on the personal brand versus the company page. Very tangible example of how this plays out in real life. We also see the same thing when OpenAI launches any features. And this is more on Twitter than LinkedIn, but I think the example still holds up here. Whenever they release a feature or any sort of update, a lot of that engagement comes from Sam Altman's personal brand versus the OpenAI company page. They still do a good job on the company page, but they just get so much more engagement and visibility using founder-led content versus company-led content. And even if we look outside of B2B marketing and over to consumer brands, you see the same trend take place. So think of Nick Bare from BPN or George Heaton from Represent. Both examples of situations where the community and sort of cult around these brands has been built using the founder's content. Like if I'm gonna go watch something from BPN, it's probably gonna be a vlog from Nick Bare or a podcast from him. Or if I'm gonna watch something from Represent, it's probably gonna be keeping up with George on Instagram or Twitter or watching their vlog on YouTube versus religiously following their company account. And again, this isn't to say that the company account and the company content isn't good or isn't needed, but if I'm starting from scratch and thinking about how to maximize my visibility, I'm going founder-led content every single time. And one of the important things about personal brand and founder-led content and why people buy from people, not from companies, is that posting from your founder's content or your account as the founder is going to allow you to be more authentic and sort of stand out from a lot of the noise out there. Like a very specific story or anecdote or example from your lived experience, nobody can copy that. Whereas someone might be able to copy 5 tips to increase your email deliverability. That's not really much of a moat, but a very specific example of how you helped a company early in your career fix their deliverability issues. Nobody can copy that. So if you're trying to grow on LinkedIn as a startup and you're wondering why you're not seeing any traction, take a look and see, am I posting from my company's page or my personal brand? And one of the easiest fixes I can recommend is take a lot of that content that's going on the company page. So you could have a blog going over a few tips or myths that people in your category struggle with. Take that same content and repurpose it for your personal brand. I almost guarantee that you'll see better engagement. And if you want an easy way to repurpose from a blog or a YouTube video over to a personal brand LinkedIn post, I built this tool called Bluecast. People are loving it, so I'll link it down in the description if you want to check that out. Now, piece of advice number 3 is stay consistent. Look, this is pretty generic advice, but it deserves its own spotlight because it is that important. I know it's not groundbreaking. I know you're not going to be mind blown by this, but it is the single most important thing when it comes to growing on LinkedIn or any social platform. If you're inconsistently posting, you're not in growth mode, you're in survival mode. Think about growing your social account just like you think about growing any other area of your business. Think about it. If you're trying to hire an amazing candidate for a role, you're not just gonna send out one outbound message to someone and ask if they know anybody. You're gonna have a LinkedIn job posting up. You're gonna make actual posts to your account looking for folks. You're gonna reach out to tons and tons and tons of people, whether it be your own connections, whether it be cold reach outs. You're gonna do whatever you can as consistently as possible to find that perfect fit for that role. Another example, cold outbound. You're not gonna send 5 outbound emails a day and hope that you're gonna land a demo with a massive company. You're probably gonna send hundreds, if not thousands thousands of cold emails per day. And even then, it takes time to see those results kick in. It's the same thing with your content. I take so many sales calls with founders for the agency, and they come and tell me, hey, I want to test LinkedIn content, but I only want to post 1 or 2 times per month. That's like sitting here and telling me, hey, I want to get a 6-pack, or I want to step on stage at a bodybuilding show. I only want to go to the gym 1 or 2 times per month. It just doesn't add up. That's not reality. And if you're more of an endurance athlete, maybe for marathon training, you're not going to go run a marathon off of 1 time per week or 1 time per month of training. It takes consistent days, one after the other, of training and workouts to build up and get your body in the shape that's required to do that. It's the same exact thing with content because of 2 things. 1, content is a skill. If you're starting from 0 and you're not good at it, you're not going to make good posts at first. That's fine. You can use something like Bluecast to make it easier for you, but even then, it's going to take some repetition. And one of the best ways to expedite that time is to just get more repetitions. Crazy, I know, but if you're posting daily, you're going to get better at the skill. Second is it allows you to stay top of mind. If you're only posting 1 time per month, you don't have the luxury of people caring about what you say yet. I'm sorry, I know it's a bit direct, but it's true. If you're starting a company from scratch, nobody really cares. And you need to get your content in front of them consistently. And that happens by posting nearly every day. And a lot of founders will think that content is a distraction. If you're this deep in this video already, you're probably not one of them, but a lot of founders will think that content is a distraction. But in reality, it's one of the highest ROI things that you could do for your business. So if you're just starting out and you do happen to have some hesitation around, should I spend this hour writing content or doing another task for your business? Here are some examples to show you kind of how this works. Even using myself as an example, we just launched Bluecast, my SaaS company, and we drove a ton of signups. We beat our original goal by 6x, and that was all through 1 LinkedIn post and 1 newsletter. But the reason that 1 LinkedIn post drove tons and tons of signups was because I've been posting on the platform for years and building trust for years and getting good at the content and the skill of content for years. It's not that 1 LinkedIn post that helped us win, it's the hundreds that I've posted before that and the relationships that I've built on the platform. Another example, I've alluded to Adam Robinson. We helped him launch his LinkedIn presence, and now he's writing his own stuff and absolutely crushing it. He spends about 25 hours a week on LinkedIn on content. It's not this passive thing that's magically gonna happen. Now, you can build a team around it eventually, you can outsource it eventually, but when you're starting, I would recommend really putting the time in to get good at the skill. And Adam is an example of what happens when you do that. If you look at Austin Hughes, another client of ours, last we checked, about 60% of their net new ARR was coming inbound through LinkedIn. He's posting pretty much every day, Monday through Friday, once per day. Another B2B services founder we work with has been posting consistently for about 2 to 3 months now, and about 1 to 2 months into that journey, they started to notice people coming inbound from LinkedIn. And again, like Austin, he's posting once per day, not once per month, not once per week, once per day. And I get it, it can be easy to let that consistency slip, especially as you're growing a company. But again, like I said, this comes back to prioritization. And I want to give you a tip to make this easier. Not every single piece of content needs to be this brand new masterpiece that you're building from scratch. One of my favorite tips is to just repurpose stuff that you've already made. It could be previous LinkedIn posts you've written, it could be blog articles, YouTube videos, podcasts, transcripts from interviews. And one of my favorite ways to do this is actually using Bluecast. Go over to Bluecast, go to blog, enter the URL. I can actually set a writing style. So I have a writing style loaded in here based on my tone of voice. It's taken my LinkedIn content that I've already produced and built a custom writing style around it. And let me generate some AI instructions here, generate the post, and boom, now I have a draft to work with. I think this might take a little bit of editing, but this just helped me go from 0 to about 70, 80% of the way there. And all I've got to do now is come in and make some minor tweaks. It'll probably take me 2 to 3 minutes, and compare that to having to sit down and come up with an idea from scratch. So between original ideas and repurposing content, what I would recommend is start with 2 to 3 times per week. I know 5 times per week is the ideal. I want to get you there eventually, but if you're starting from 0 and you're like, Tommy, I get it, 5 times per week is ideal, but I just can't do that. I don't have the skill yet. I'm kind of scared that my audience is going to get annoyed. They're not, but I get it. I understand the fear. Start with 2 to 3 times per week. This is the bare minimum. Think of it again like the gym. You're not really going to get results going less than 2 times per week. Same thing with LinkedIn content. So if you do nothing else in this video, just be consistent, and each time you post, try to make one thing better. Make the hook a little bit stronger, make the format of the post a little bit more effective, make the CTA a bit more punchy. Pick a better piece of media to go with the post. There's always something you can improve. You do this for a month, a year, it's gonna be night and day, and a lot of your business is gonna be coming through LinkedIn, and it's gonna be great. Now, tying into that last point, sometimes it can really feel impossible to have the time to sit down to write LinkedIn content. I get it, and I've understood this more and more as I've built my own company over the past year and a half. When I was an individual contributor, a marketer in-house, I was like, why don't founders just sit down and write their own stuff? It's not that hard, doesn't take that much time. It's obviously very helpful, but as I've grown the agency and now the SaaS, my calendar has become more and more of a dumpster fire, and I can really empathize with the founders we work with. If you're on sales calls all day or managing your team, and by the time you sit down to write stuff or try to, your brain is just fried. And believe it or not, there's actually ways to delegate your content, even for your personal brand, effectively. I'm not saying to go hire some random ghostwriter who doesn't understand your industry or is going to produce generic, cringeworthy content. That's the last thing you want to do because you're going to torch your personal brand. But there is a way to delegate tastefully, and this is the exact workflow that we run with every one of our clients. You can just steal it here. I'm going to lay it out for you. The method is called the content interview, and essentially we sit down for a conversation and extract a bunch of examples, stories, anecdotes that then turn into source material for truly authentic content, because it's stuff that came from your own mind that you would have written about anyway if you had the time. And here's how I'd recommend setting it up. You can run this with your own team. So step one is to prepare 7 to 10 prompts ahead of the interview. You want these prompts to be questions or thought starters based on topics that you know are going to perform well with your ICP and also lead to LinkedIn worthy content. And there are a few different ways to organize these prompts. So there's top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. Top of funnel tends to be more like building in public, founder journey type of stuff that's broader, tends to perform really well on LinkedIn in terms of engagement and impressions, but isn't always the most specific to your ICP. You don't want to over index in this direction, but having a few posts sprinkled in that are more top of funnel can help you get traction on the platform faster. Middle of funnel is industry specific thought leadership. So say for example, you're launching a SaaS in the email marketing space. Middle of funnel content would be examples, anecdotes, stories, or even just straight up listicles and tips going over email marketing best practices, myths, things to avoid, overcoming objections, and positioning you as the go-to resource in your category. Bottom of funnel, pretty straightforward. This is all your product related stuff. So case studies, feature highlights, launches, stuff that is more salesy for lack of a better term. You could come up with these prompts yourself. I also have a list of 50 of these templates for prompts for content interviews that I'll link in the description below if you want to check those out. Now, step 2 is to actually run the content interview. These will typically be 30 to 45 minutes. I'd recommend scheduling these every 2 weeks. Make it a non-negotiable event in your calendar as a founder. One of the biggest determinants of success with the clients we work with is, do they show up to the content interviews consistently? The ones that fail and maybe it's not a good fit for us don't end up showing up consistently. They struggle to really invest even those 30 to 45 minutes every 2 weeks. The ones that win show up, they're prepared, they're excited, they're ready to go. Now, once you're sitting down in the chair, you're being interviewed, you want that to really flow like a podcast interview. It should be very conversational. Don't view it as a job interview where you're going question to question to question. Whoever is running the interview should be able to make it a conversation. This is why having someone who is an expert or at least proficient in your industry or your category is important here, because they can actually kind of riff off ideas with you, ask follow-up questions, really get all the material they need to produce relevant content. Whoever's running this interview should also be good at keeping you on topic. You don't want to ramble a ton. You want to share your stories, experiences, anecdotes, make it authentic, but you want to keep it focused so you can get through those 7 to 10 prompts and posts in that 30 to 45 minute session. So you want it to be conversational, but you also want it to be focused. Now, after you record the interview, you're going to be left with a transcript to work with. Think of this like a marble block, and then we're the sculptors that go in and make it nice and pretty and optimized for the LinkedIn algorithm. I'm just imagining myself as Michelangelo creating the statue of David, except it's a B2B SaaS LinkedIn post for a fintech founder. But in all seriousness, the beauty of this format is that it's ghostwritten, but it's not really ghostwritten, because the content that's coming from you and the content that ends up on LinkedIn was in your head anyway. And again, if you had the time to sit down and write or film content, you likely would have written about that topic anyway, but because you worked with someone to outsource this and delegate this, 1, it actually got done, and 2, it probably got done in a format that's a bit more effective for the LinkedIn algorithm. So with that transcript, your team should be able to turn that into about 5 LinkedIn posts a week. Again, if you want to start with 2 to 3, like we talked about earlier, that's fine. Eventually, you'll be able to get to 5 posts per week off of just this single 30 to 45 minute content interview every 2 weeks. Now, once your team has produced this content for you, all you got to do is edit the content. And once they understand your tone of voice, what you're looking for, this should really only take 5 to 10 minutes per post. Again, if we go back to that example that I showed you from the Bluecast output, I probably need to edit that for 2 to 5 minutes. Same thing applies if you're having your team or an agency or a ghostwriter create this content for you using the content interview format. And think about it, sitting down to edit a piece for 10 minutes is way more time efficient than sitting down for 3 hours to bang your head against a wall and stare at a blank Google Doc and wonder what the hell you're going to write about. So I can't recommend this strategy enough. And and it saves me and my clients hours of time every single week. And it's honestly pretty fun if you like to chat and do podcast interviews. And as a quick bonus here, if you record the video footage from those interviews, you can actually use it as short form video clips for LinkedIn, which are being heavily incentivized by the algorithm right now. Now, the fifth piece of advice I've got for you is we want to make you into a real thought leader. So naturally, the end goal of posting on LinkedIn is to get you customers, to get you demos. You want to actually achieve a business outcome. But the way we get there is by positioning you as a thought leader. And one way I like to think about this that comes from Dave Gerhardt, the author of the book Founder Brand, which I highly recommend reading, is that you want to position yourself as the go-to resource for your ICP. So just an example, if I can position myself as the go-to resource for LinkedIn content marketing, selling my SaaS, Bluecast, becomes infinitely easier. Using the email marketing example that we talked about earlier, if you are selling an email marketing SaaS and you can position yourself as the go-to resource for email marketing, deliverability, it's going to make selling your SaaS a lot easier. An example of that would be Jimmy Kim from Sendlin. He's ran that playbook in email marketing very well. Also a former client of Compound, which we helped launch his LinkedIn and social presence in general. He's crushing it. Now, not everyone can be a legit thought leader in this space. That's the honest truth. You need real experience and expertise and credibility to make it happen. But likely, if you are a founder of a company, you didn't just spawn there. You didn't just appear in that role. Your career and your path led you there. So if you're starting an email marketing SaaS, for example, you probably had some experience running a brand or doing email marketing in the past. Since I'm running a LinkedIn content SaaS, I've had plenty of experience doing LinkedIn content for myself and for other companies, so I can speak to it. If you're building a SaaS in the go-to-market space like Austin Hughes, you likely have experience in the go-to-market space, which gives you credibility and also gives you material to write about. The tricky part is when you start to try to build an audience in a category where you just don't have that credibility, and it can be done, but it's going to take longer, and I usually wouldn't recommend it. Now, I talk to so many founders who, by any definition of the word, would be thought leaders or that go-to resource for their category, but they just haven't positioned themselves the right way, and they're wondering why they're not getting any traction on LinkedIn. This usually comes from, again, skewing to bottom of funnel and only posting product updates and feature highlights and all that more salesy stuff, which is fine and needed, but you also want to balance it out with middle and top of funnel content to really position you as that go-to resource. So here are a few examples of what that could look like in practice. The first type of post is going to be personal stories and insights. This is by far one of the most effective ways to build your personal brand on LinkedIn. It's just sharing experiences and stories from your own career. Because again, you didn't just end up in this founder position. You had experiences that led you there, and a lot of those can turn into great LinkedIn content. And even now, as you're building the company, taking things like customer anecdotes or anecdotes from sales calls or talks with prospects or meeting someone at a conference, all of those things turn into personal story related content. So for example, you could post about a recent challenge your company faced and how you solved it, the lessons you learned, and this can position you as an expert and also help tell the story of your company. Another type of content could be industry trends and predictions. That sort of timely content is one of the best ways to hack attention. So if you notice that there's this big piece of news that drops in your category, so if you're in email marketing and Klaviyo drops something, if you're in go-to-market and there's this like deliverability update to cold emails or whatever, something like that, commenting on it and giving your perspective as an expert is one of the best ways to get in front of more people because the topic is timely, and then also position yourself as an expert because you're adding your own take to it. You can also overcome objections in your content. So if you were on a sales call and you faced a really unique objection, you can actually take that and create a piece of content detailing how you would overcome that or what the answer is. And what that does is it helps more people that end up on sales calls with you or on demos with you already have seen that piece of content, and that objection is already overcome ahead of time. So for example, with my own SaaS, if someone's like, oh, I don't know how much time it's going to take me to use Bluecast to create my LinkedIn content, I might create a piece of LinkedIn content around how it actually only takes you 5 minutes to generate a post from scratch. So positioning yourself this way and just trying to be genuinely helpful on LinkedIn is the best way to win in the long run. It builds trust and credibility over time, and that trust can translate into dollars eventually. And when you're seen as the go-to resource for your ICP, eventually when you're selling a product and they need something in your category, they're going to come to you because you've provided so much value, because you've built so much trust, and they know you're an expert because you're sharing your experiences, you're sharing case studies, you're sharing all this stuff that makes it a no-brainer to work with you eventually. Now, let's talk about setting up your profile. Now, your profile is something that's really easy to overlook, but it's surprisingly important. The good thing is that it doesn't take that much time to set up properly. It's easy to just jot down a few things and leave it at that, or use like a ChatGPT generated bio that just reads super cringe, not have an optimized headline, your profile picture sucks, your banner's non-existent, the links in bio aren't updated, and you've done all this work of creating this great content, but when people come to your page, they don't don't know what to do. They're not going to follow. They're not going to take that next step. And all of that effort was for naught. So if your profile isn't clean, relevant, and a bit searchable, you're leaving a lot of engagement and business on the table. But again, the setup here isn't that complicated. And there's a few components to remember. So if I look at a few examples here, if you look at Austin's, first is going to be the profile picture. It should be clear, easy to see your face, have it pretty zoomed in on your face. I'd go shoulders up. Don't have it like your whole upper body or even your whole body. It's going to be too far away. And if people are scrolling on mobile, they're not going to be able to recognize you. So make it pretty close to your face, clear, solid background, not overly complex. You can have your banner set up in a way that's more branded, like Austin has this set up. Or if I look at my own account, my banner is pretty scrappy. Like it's not super branded. It's not this pretty graphic. Honestly, the banner is kind of hit or miss. I wouldn't overthink this. If you want to use a more branded one, cool. If not, it's not going to make or break anything. The second piece is going to be your headlines. Looking at mine here, CEO at Compound, co-founder at Bluecast, building a social media agency for B2B companies. So there's a simple formula here. One is your role, your company. So in my case, I've got two because I'm a co-founder at Bluecast, which is my SaaS company, but CEO at Compound. So role at company, and then a simple one-line value prop of what someone can expect for following you. So in my case, I'm building a social media agency for B2B companies. So if someone wants to get better at social content for B2B companies, they're going to follow me. You also want to include some keywords in here. So if you're trying to reach B2B marketers, include B2B marketing in your headline, in your bio. So you show up in search in your role that you have listed. Now, as far as a bio, it's not overly complex, just a few quick lines. I like to share what I'm building, a bit of social proof, and what to expect on my LinkedIn page. That's it. It's nothing too complex. So another example I can look at here is Alina from Chili Piper. If you look at her bio, again, not super long, talks a bit about her journey and then what to expect on LinkedIn. Good example to follow. Now, you also want to have your featured links set up properly. And this is where you want to direct people to the next best step. So for me, that's either to my newsletter or to the templates that I have. By the way, if you want those templates, I will link them in the description. But you see how I kind of use the imagery here, kind of like a YouTuber uses a thumbnail. I want to make it more and more likely that people click through, because again, the whole point here is that when people click to my profile, I want them to take the next best step. So if they're not following me already, I want them to follow me. And if they want to learn more about what I do or build a deeper relationship with me and move them closer to making a purchase or working with my agency, signing up for the SaaS, I want them to either go to my newsletter where they can be nurtured via email or just make a low ticket purchase like the templates. So as a SaaS founder, there are a few different ways you could use your featured links. One is I would just go directly to your site. This is basic 101. If you have nothing else, you don't have an email list yet, you just want to get traffic to your site, amazing, that's fine. Two is going to be an email list. If you have a newsletter, if you don't, I'd recommend setting one up. It's a great way to nurture leads. Three can be case studies. If you have examples of case studies that live on your site, you can use the link here as a sort of social proof to move people closer to a purchase. So again, just another example of the featured link. So Adam Robinson links directly to their site. Again, notice how he uses the imagery here, kind of like a YouTube thumbnail. You want to use all the tools that you have at your disposal to move people toward your desired result, whether that be following you, engaging with a post, clicking to your site, signing up for your email list, booking a demo. And the featured links are one of the best ways to do that. And remember, your profile on LinkedIn is pretty much a landing page. You want to make sure it's optimized properly. Now, before we close out here, I want to mention one piece of advice that's really helped me grow and help my clients stand out from other companies that are B2B startups. And that's stealing from other industries. So specifically looking to consumer brands that are doing really well on social or in content and looking at how they build things out and how they set up their content. A lot of times B2B companies will post very sterile content on social. They're playing it too safe. They're not really operating with the consumer in mind. It's like white papers and webinars and all this super boring stuff that I'd rather watch paint dry than sit in some boring webinar. And it's like someone who submits their email to download a white paper is probably not the highest quality lead. Yet that's how these companies operate. What I like to do instead is look at what consumer brands and companies are doing right now. How are they approaching content? How are they essentially building cult followings around their company? Because what you'll find is that B2B is often a few years behind consumers. So a few years back, influencer marketing has always kind of been a thing, but it's really picked up on social in the past decade or so. And just now, it's starting to get more into B2B. I have a few friends in my circle that have launched influencer marketing agencies for these B2B software companies. And you're seeing a lot more LinkedIn influencers take brand deals. And this is only going to pick up. That's just an example of, hey, this was popular in consumer a few years ago and still is. Now it's making its way to B2B. You see the same thing with founder-led content. So again, using examples like BPN and Nick Bare or Represent and George Heaton or Chris Bumstead and Raw Nutrition. As you can tell, I'm really into health and fitness given my examples. But you look at those examples and those are really like founder-led content masterclasses. And now you see the same thing starting to happen in B2B with Adam Robinson, with Chris Walker, and all these folks where they've built up these personal audiences. And the good thing with this trend is it's still just getting started. So kind of back to that idea of stealing from other industries, what I would recommend is pay attention to the content you consume in your free time. Why is it working for you? How are they hooking you in? Why do you keep watching? Why are you stuck on this Instagram reel as you're rotting your brain after work? Why are you watching this vlog series on YouTube? What is it about that piece, that YouTube thumbnail, the way that video is structured, the subject line of that email you clicked into? What are they doing well that you can apply into your own content? This is one of the things that really helped us at Triple Whale. For example, our strategy there was very meme heavy and humor heavy. That's not the right approach for every B2B company, but it worked for us. And a lot of that came from looking at consumer brands that were crushing it on LinkedIn and on social in general. So look outside your industry. Don't stay in this B2B webinar and white paper echo chamber that's only going to keep your content boring. And that's what 7 years of LinkedIn experience looks like, squished down into one video. And if you want to grab some of my best templates for getting started on LinkedIn, I'll link those down in the description below. There's over 50 ideas that you could use to create content and really never run out of ideas again. Just make sure you're actually going to use them and not just download them and ignore them. And if you're an early stage SaaS founder or marketer, you probably want to know what to avoid or what to stay away from as you grow your company and your content on LinkedIn. So click here to watch a video where I show you 5 of the most common mistakes that SaaS founders make when they're starting out building their company and their content. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in that next video.